Salut YouTube and welcome to the February Q&A. I have had so many questions come through since my first Q&A in January. If you're watching now and you want to send me some questions to answer, I have an Ask Me Anything form which I'll leave down in the description box below that you can use to send me through your questions. So I'm going to get through as many of these questions as humanly possible. You guys know that I have a bit of a tendency to ramble, like I'm rambling right now. We should probably just get started. Just as a side note, I did get a lot of questions around my study abroad in Paris, why I chose human resources, all of these kinds of things. I'm going to park those and I'm going to answer them in another Q&A next week. So I'll do a special dedicated study abroad Q&A for you guys. But without further ado, let's get into the other questions about my expat life in France. My first question coming in is from Eliza, who's an Australian/Kiwi, but she speaks fluent French and she's been attending French schools her whole life, but has never actually been to the motherland in France. And she's asked me what would be the best region, according to me, to study in from a Kiwi perspective. I've been to many different regions in France: Normandy, Brittany, Burgundy, the south of France, central France, Lyon, Grenoble, Clermont-Ferrand. I've been to the southwest of France, I've been down to the Pyrenees and Bordeaux, and if I'm thinking about which region really made me feel the most at home, I would say it would be the southwest of France, just in the way that it looks, the way that it feels, the people down there. They're also rugby mad, and so I would definitely look into either Toulouse or Bordeaux. If you want something completely different that's the opposite to everything that you know, come to Paris. The next question is from Thibaut, who's asked me if I've ever seen the 14th of July celebrations, so the Bastille Day, or Bastille Day as we call them, celebrations in France. So yes, I have seen them, and I think they're absolutely incredible. For those who haven't seen them, they do a light show and a fireworks display down by Trocadero and the Eiffel Tower, and it's just magical. And I was super lucky because when I first moved to Paris, even though I was in a tiny studio apartment for the first 2.5 years, I actually had an amazing view directly on the Eiffel Tower. I'll insert some photos if I can find some of my view so you can imagine. So it was the best compromise because not only did I see the show, but I saw it from the comfort of my own living room and stayed on the couch. My next question is from Jamie, who says that she's a little bit confused about dating in France and how things work with French guys. And I can definitely understand with Jamie. So firstly, is it normal to go Dutch when you're dating or when you become boyfriend and girlfriend? So going Dutch means to split down the middle, 50-50 when you go out for meals and stuff. And in general, I would say yes, it is normal. French boys aren't necessarily trained to be the gentleman that we think of maybe, which means that they're taking you out, they're always paying for things, they're paying for your drinks, and they're often paying for your meals, and especially when they're courting you and dating you, it's up to them to pay because they're kind of inviting you out. And I think here, in the name of feminism, both French men don't really like that kind of thing, and I don't think French women like it either. And number two, Jamie says that she's heard that French guys get exclusive really quickly, like maybe after a few dates, and I would say, yep, this is absolutely true. So if you go out together a few times and when you arrive to the date, if they kiss you on the lips, then you're considered exclusive item and you're dating. So you are in a one-to-one relationship and it's on. It doesn't mean that it's going to be on for a long time, it's going to be on forever, but it is on from that point, and you're considered just to be dating each other. The next question is from Warren, who's asking me if France is a dog-friendly country. So is it easy to get around with your dog? Is there dog-friendly accommodation, etc.? The French love their dogs, so I would say yep, it definitely is. You can find accommodation in hotels that allow you to have your pets with you, no problem. And what's quite nice is that when you're taking the TGV or the trains in France, you see a lot of people carrying their dogs or their cats, so you know, it is quite an animal-friendly country in that way, and I don't think you'll have any problems getting around. The next question is from Eve, who's basically asking me about my English accent, and she says, since when do you speak English with an accent as if it were French? She finds my accent quite soft, and that I speak in a soft way, more so like French people, and why that is. So I would say that yes, I think my accent definitely has changed since living over here because I needed to be understood, and so to be understood I tended to speak a lot slower and sort of articulate more and round out my vowels a little bit. But it just takes me like 1 week of being back home and my accent is back with full force, like the full New Zealand accent. 5 years living abroad will do this to your accent. The next question made me laugh. It's from French Fancies, and they asked me like, okay, so this may sound like a silly question, but how do you get furniture into your apartment? Because the apartments in Paris are super narrow and small and there's tiny little staircases, so how do you practically get things like a couch into your apartment? And this is a really good question actually. So we moved into this apartment and it was completely empty, and so I bought everything online which had free delivery. That was just the best thing to do because they kind of had to figure it out, and the delivery guys would like get everything up the stairs or in the elevator if you're lucky enough to have an elevator. But I have actually seen on the streets of Paris literally like moving trucks with specialized ladders, and the ladders are heading into the windows or the balconies of Parisian apartments just to get furniture inside. I've also heard sometimes of things being cut in half and put back together where possible just to get it in. So that's kind of how things work over here. The next question is from Danny, who's asking me how to meet people outside of work or school, because she's going to be in Paris for the next 6 months. She's not studying and she's not doing a traditional job. So how can you meet real French people? And I'd say the best thing for you would be go to the Franglish meetups. Franglish meetups are language exchange meetups where you have English speakers and French speakers, and you want to learn each other's language. And so 50% of the people in the room are French, and that's a really nice way to meet and connect some French people really quickly. The next question is from Donna, and she's asking me what I think of French luxury designer handbags. Why are they so expensive, and do regular ladies carry them? So this is an interesting question because I used to work for the group that owned Louis Vuitton and big luxury brands like this, and I was able to visit the workshops and see a lot of these products still being made by hand. For example, the Louis Vuitton suitcases made by hand in the workshops. And if you think about it, there's like these craftsmen that have passed down this knowledge on how to work with the leather and construct these luxury items from hand, and it's been passed down through the generations. So I do kind of get that side. On the other hand, we know that a lot of this stuff now is outsourced and it's being fabricated in cheaper areas of the world to Eastern Europe, Romania, Bulgaria, for example, and also sometimes in Asia. And so I think what you're paying for is an element of quality and an element of know-how or savoir-faire with these luxury items. At the same time, you're of course paying for the prestige and the label and simply fashion. Do regular ladies carry them? Yes and no. Define regular ladies. I think, yeah, middle class women, for example, it would be maybe a special gift for a 50th birthday, you know, a nice designer handbag, etc. But no, it's not like every single French woman is walking around with a Louis Vuitton bag or a Dior bag. I mean, I do see them quite often, but definitely not every single woman. My next question is from Remy, who's asking me if I feel like doing a video on kind of killing the French cliches, for example, that the French smell really bad and things like this. I have thought about it, but I'm like, surely people don't believe that, you know, anymore. I mean, surely they don't think that the French are smelling bad and out there cheating on everyone and this kind of thing. But what do you guys think? Do you think I should treat these kind of cliches in a video? Do you think it would be useful? Do you think people would like it? I'll leave this decision up to you. Let me know down below if you think it's a good idea or not. The next question is from Jérôme, who has asked me for my favorite French music and which are my favorite books to read in French. I'm going to be really honest and admit that I haven't actually started reading books in French yet. I watch series in French, I listen to French podcasts, and I listen to French music, but I haven't started reading in French yet because reading's such a pleasure for me and I love doing it in my own language. For the French music, I get this question quite a lot actually, so I'm going to link a playlist down in the description box below so you can see what my favorite French songs are at the moment. Benu also asked me about my favorite French music, back so you can check out my playlist, and has asked me if there's any New Zealand groups that I can allow you guys to discover. So I'll also put a playlist down below full of classic Kiwi music. Benno's actually asked me lots of different questions. I'll just answer a few of them here. So another question was, are there any no-go zones in New Zealand that are like kind of scary or dodgy and that you do not go there? And the short answer is no. He's also asked me if I know the concept of verlan, which is when, you know, because the French language isn't complicated enough, French people take a word and kind of flip it backwards and it becomes a kind of slang word. So for example, instead of femme for woman, people often say meuf, and instead of énervé for annoyed, you can say vénère, for example. And yeah, some of them are completely random. Teuf for fit or party, like it's just all completely backwards and crazy. And yes, I do know about it, but I'm not very good at it because I can't even get the basic French language down yet, let alone verlan. The next question is from Michelle, and it's quite a tough one. Michelle asks me if I really feel integrated in France, like a French person, or I feel still like a New Zealand expatriate living in France. So I would say that I'm more integrated in France than feeling like an expat in France, that's for sure, because I fundamentally as a person have changed so much. My whole viewpoint on things has changed, and I feel very attached to France. And I am working for a big French company. I do have a French partner and French in-laws, so French family. So I do feel relatively well integrated, but I do think the thing that's really kind of stopping me from taking that to the next level is to have like a really strong network of close French friends, because I've got a few close French friends, but only a few, and it's really like, it's taken me almost 5 years just to make 2. And it's easy to meet a lot of French people at work, through my boyfriend, etc., but that doesn't mean that they're your deep friends that you could call up crying when you really need them. So something that I hope to do is just keep building those relationships with French people and having my own circle of close French friends to really feel 100% integrated. Andrew has asked me quite a tough question, which is, what do you think the French think of Americans? So I have a lot of French viewers, so maybe they can help me out down in the comment section below on what are your stereotypes of Americans. But from what I understand is that French people view the Americans, they can be quite loud, they can be so positive and enthusiastic that it can almost come across as a little bit fake to French people sometimes. I also think there's a little bit of a cliche that Americans never learn anything about the rest of the world. Everything's very American centric. So those are kind of like the bad stereotypes I would say the French have about Americans. I know plenty of French people who dream of moving to the States, living the American dream, working over there, you know, doing the Californian road trip, all of that kind of stuff. So they definitely appreciate the States. But it is hard for me to say because I'm not French, so maybe I'll let the French viewers comment down below on that one. But remember guys, to be kind. The next question coming from Dave asks me about the French workplace, and I'm going to link my video that I've just released on the French workplace up here. But he's saying that he's heard that French people can be kind of nationalist or racist or selective when it comes to, you know, recruiting team members and then even how they treat team members. So what I'm understanding is that you've heard that French people can really prefer French people and treat foreigners a little bit differently. I don't think that's really true. Maybe it was, but maybe not anymore. There's definitely something about the French connecting with the French at work, which is kind of normal. They speak the same language, they share the same values more or less, you know, so there's definitely something that's very natural and human about that. But I think in the French workplace, international profiles are becoming more and more valued. I've noticed that where I'm working, they're recruiting so many international profiles that they're trying to change things up and make things more modern and international. So I think it really depends. I think if you target like a big French multinational, you'll maybe even find that you've got more advantages than the French because you've got an interesting profile and you stand out from the crowd. And the second part of your question was that you wanted to know if you think that French qualifications are transferable to the rest of the world, especially in engineering and math and this kind of thing. And I'd say yeah, absolutely. So firstly, not only will the qualifications be absolutely recognized all throughout Europe, But for example, in the United States and France, they've got bilateral agreements so that they absolutely honor the qualifications that you get in medicine and engineering and science and this kind of thing. France has a very respected education system and very high quality qualifications, so there'll be no problem whatsoever in 99% of cases. Heather asks me if I've noticed any gender differences, so the differences in the gender roles between men and women in France. For example, a woman stuck in the kitchen, kind of cleaning and doing all the cooking for the family kind of thing. So I would say that France is like most Western countries in that they're very conscious of the fact that women should absolutely be equals and should have equal opportunities in the workplace, etc. And they're still suffering from a gender pay gap. So women on general earn 15% less than men for doing exactly the same job. This is slightly lower than the European average, which is around 16.5% gender gap. So they're doing slightly better than the European average. You know, when you look at the older generations, the grandmothers and even the older mothers in France, they do tend to do quite a lot of the cooking for the family, I've noticed. You know, they tend to have that role, but the rest of the family, boys included, are setting the table, they're doing the cleaning, they're doing other things. So I would say, like most countries, there are some more traditional gender roles that the women have held, and we're still suffering from a gender pay gap. But the mindset's in the right place. People are conscious of the fact that that needs to change, and it just keeps getting better and better. And any young woman, I think, in France feels very independent and like they have a lot of choice. I think it's going in the right direction, and it's relatively modern. Eddie has asked me if French mothers with more than 3 children get a medal and free travel. I don't know, that sounds a little bit far-fetched to me, but I do know that French mothers do have a lot of advantages in France. For example, after the 3rd child, they get more maternity leave, there are more tax breaks. So yeah, there are quite a lot of advantages to having more than 3 children in France, and in general, with the support of state, with the support of, for example, the crèche system here, which is relatively cheap. I can link an interesting article that I read about this in the description box below. Okay guys, I'm not even halfway done, and I realized that this Q&A is going to be way too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it here. I'll cut it into 2 parts. So you'll have this part, which will be the part 1, and the next part, which is going to be part 2, where I continue answering all of these kinds of questions. So let's leave it here for now, and I'll see you in the next video. À bientôt, à tout de suite.